Imagine pulling a simple penny from your pocket change and discovering that this small copper coin might hold a surprising story from one of the most unusual years in American coin history. At first glance, it looks ordinary. The small, worn, and probably something most people would barely notice. But the 1967 Lincoln penny without a mint mark has a fascinating background that many collectors still talk about today. The 1967 Lincoln penny is part of one of the most interesting periods in modern American coinage. This coin carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a design that millions of Americans recognize instantly. Yet something about the coins from this year stands out. Unlike many other pennies, the 1967 Lincoln cent does not display a mint mark. For collectors and curious observers, that small missing letter raises an important question. Why is it missing? To understand this coin, we need to step back into the mid-1960s. During this time, the United States was facing a nationwide coin shortage. People were saving coins, collectors were pulling them from circulation, and many believed certain coins would become valuable. As a result, everyday transactions began to suffer because there simply were not enough coins moving through the economy. In response, the United States Mint made a very unusual decision. From 1965 through 1967, mint marks were removed from circulating coins. Normally, coins produced in cities like Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco carry a small letter indicating where they were made. But during this 3-year period, the government removed those mint marks to discourage collectors from hoarding coins based on their mint location. Because of that decision, every Lincoln penny struck in 1967 appears to have no mint mark at all. In reality, these pennies were produced at multiple facilities, but the identifying letters were intentionally left off the coins. Even though the coin may seem simple, the design carries deep historical meaning. On the front, the coin features the well-known portrait of President Abraham Lincoln. This design was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. It was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and it became the first circulating American coin to feature a real historical person. On the reverse side of the 1967 penny, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial. This design replaced the earlier wheat stalk reverse in 1959. The memorial design was created by Frank Gasparo and remained on pennies until 2008. If you look very closely at the center of the memorial, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, making this coin unique because Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin. The metal composition of the 1967 Lincoln penny is also part of its story. These coins are made mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This gives the coin its warm reddish color when it is new, although over time many pennies darken to a brown tone as they circulate and age. While millions of 1967 pennies were produced, collectors still search for special versions of this coin. Certain errors and unusual conditions can make some of them surprisingly valuable. One of the most exciting things collectors look for is a double die error. This happens when the coin die is accidentally engraved twice in slightly different positions. When that die strikes a coin, parts of the design appear doubled. On some 1967 pennies, collectors have discovered doubling in the letters or numbers, making those coins much more interesting to specialists. Another sought-after variety involves off-center strikes. During the minting process, if the coin blank is not properly aligned, part of the design may be missing from the edge of the coin. These off-center coins are rare because quality control usually removes them before they leave the mint. Collectors also search for coins with strong red color that have never circulated. In the coin collecting world, these are often called red pennies, because they still retain the bright copper tone from the day they were minted. A well-preserved 1967 red Lincoln penny can be worth far more than one that has spent decades in circulation. So how much can a 1967 penny without a mint mark actually be worth? In most cases, an average circulated example is worth only a few cents above its face value. But when the coin is in exceptional condition, the story changes. High-grade coins that still show strong red color can sell for dozens of dollars, sometimes even hundreds depending on the quality. Professional grading services evaluate coins using a scale that measures tiny details such as luster, marks, and sharpness of the strike. In some auctions, nearly perfect examples have reached impressive prices. Coins graded at extremely high levels have sold for hundreds and, in rare cases, even over $1,000 when collectors compete for the finest known specimens. Heir coins can sometimes be even more valuable. A noticeable double die or a dramatic off-center strike can attract serious attention from collectors who specialize in mint mistakes. Of course, when a coin becomes desirable, the question of authenticity becomes important. Fortunately, the 1967 Lincoln penny is relatively easy to identify because of its design and metal composition. A genuine coin should weigh around 3.11 grams and measure about 19 millimeters in diameter. The surface should show the familiar Lincoln portrait and the Lincoln memorial with clear details. Since mint marks were intentionally removed that year, the absence of a mint mark is completely normal for 1967 pennies. If someone claims to have a rare variety, collectors often recommend examining the coin with magnification. Small details in the lettering and numbers can reveal whether the coin shows real doubling or just normal wear. Many serious collectors also choose to have valuable coins authenticated by professional grading services. These companies examine the coin carefully and seal it in a protective holder that confirms its grade and authenticity. Beyond value and rarity, the 1967 Lincoln penny carries a few fascinating details that many people don't realize. For example, this coin comes from the final years before the United States Mint dramatically changed the metal composition of many coins. By the early 1970s and 1980s, rising copper prices forced the mint to experiment with different materials. Another interesting fact is that during the 1965 to 1967 period, the government also stopped producing official proof sets for collectors. Instead, they released special mint sets with coins that were carefully struck but still lacked mint marks. This unusual approach was part of the effort to reduce coin collecting speculation during the coin shortage. Because of these unusual policies, coins from these years represent a very specific chapter in American minting history. They remind us how economic conditions and public behavior can influence even the smallest objects we use every day. Collectors today appreciate the 1967 Lincoln penny not because it is extremely rare, but because it tells a story. It reflects a time when the United States Mint took drastic steps to keep coins circulating in everyday commerce. For many people, the excitement begins with the possibility that an ordinary coin might hide something unusual. A small minting error, an exceptional condition, or a rare variety can transform a simple penny into a collector's treasure. And that is one of the most beautiful aspects of coin collecting. History can be held in the palm of your hand. A coin that once passed through grocery stores, vending machines, and pockets across America can suddenly become a piece of history worth studying and preserving. The next time you come across a 1967 Lincoln penny, take a closer look before you toss it aside. Notice the details in Lincoln's portrait. Look carefully at the Lincoln memorial on the reverse. Check the color, the condition, and the tiny features that collectors care about. You might simply be holding a common coin from the 1960s. But you could also be holding a well-preserved piece of history from one of the most unusual minting periods in the United States. And sometimes, the coins that appear the most ordinary are the ones with the most interesting stories waiting to be discovered. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that the tiny copper coin in your hand might actually be worth hundreds, or even thousands of dollars. It sounds unbelievable, but for some collectors, that moment has already happened. And today, we're exploring one particular coin that has sparked curiosity among collectors for decades, the 1969 D Lincoln penny. At first glance, the 1969 D Lincoln cent looks like any other ordinary penny. It's small, copper-colored, and easy to overlook. Millions of people have probably handled one without ever giving it a second thought. But hidden behind this simple coin is a fascinating story of American history, minting technology, and the excitement of coin collecting. The 1969 D Lincoln penny was produced in 1969 at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small letter D just below the date on the front of the coin. The Lincoln cent itself has a long history. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. This was a historic moment because it marked the first time a real person appeared on a circulating U.S. coin. By the late 1960s, the United States was going through a time of change. The country was dealing with economic pressure, rising metal costs, and a growing demand for coins in everyday commerce. Because of this demand, the U.S. Mint produced huge numbers of pennies during that era. In 1969, the Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents. These coins were made primarily from a bronze alloy consisting of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Each coin weighed about 3.11 grams and measured 19 millimeters in diameter. While those numbers might sound technical, they simply mean the coin had the same classic feel and weight Americans had known for decades. The design of the coin is simple but iconic. On the front, or obverse, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces to the right, and above his head appears the word Liberty. The date 1969 sits near the right side of the coin, and just beneath it is the small D mint mark indicating Denver. The phrase "In God We Trust" curves along the top edge of the coin, a motto that has appeared on U.S. coins since the 1800s. On the back of the 1969 penny, you find the classic wheat-free design that had been used since 1959. Instead of wheat stalks, the reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. This design was created by Frank Gasparo and was introduced to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, you might notice something fascinating. Within the tiny image of the memorial, the statue of Abraham Lincoln is actually visible between the columns. That means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, a small detail that many people never notice. Now here's where things start to get interesting. Even though millions of 1969 D pennies were produced, collectors still search for them today. Why? Because certain versions of this coin can be worth far more than their face value, especially if they are in excellent condition or contain unusual minting errors. One reason collectors pay attention to coins like the 1969 D penny is the possibility of mint errors. Mint errors occur when something unusual happens during the coin production process. These mistakes can create coins that look slightly different from normal ones, and collectors often find those differences fascinating. With coins from the late 1960s, some of the most talked about errors include off-center strikes, die cracks, and doubling in the lettering or numbers. These types of variations can make a coin much more desirable to collectors. For example, if a 1969 D penny shows clear doubling in its design or has an unusual strike pattern, collectors may consider it a special piece. While most examples are worth only a few cents, certain error coins can sell for far higher amounts depending on their rarity and condition. Condition plays a huge role in determining a coin's value. Coins that were never circulated and still show their original mint luster are far more valuable than coins that spent decades moving through cash registers and pockets. Professional coin grading companies use a scale from 1 to 70 to evaluate a coin's condition. Coins that score in the upper range, especially above 65, are considered extremely well preserved. A typical circulated 1969 D penny might be worth just a few cents or perhaps slightly more to a collector filling a set. But if the coin is found in near-perfect condition, especially one graded in the high mint state range, it can sell for significantly more. Auction records have shown that well-preserved examples of 1969 D Lincoln cents can bring impressive prices when collectors compete for the best quality coins. High-grade pieces certified by professional grading services have sold for hundreds of dollars, simply because so few remain in such pristine condition. Another factor that excites collectors is the hunt itself. Many valuable coins have been discovered in everyday pocket change, coin jars, or rolls of pennies from the bank. This idea that treasure could still be hiding in plain sight keeps collectors searching. But when it comes to valuable coins, there's always another side to the story. Counterfeits and misidentified coins. If you think you've found a valuable 1969 D penny, there are a few things collectors usually check. First, they look closely at the mint mark. The small d should appear clean and properly positioned below the date. Altered coins sometimes show signs of tampering around the mint mark. Second, collectors often examine the lettering and numbers using a magnifying glass. Genuine coins have consistent shapes and spacing, while fake or altered coins may show irregularities. Weight is another important clue. A genuine bronze Lincoln penny from 1969 should weigh close to 3.11 grams. If a coin is significantly lighter or heavier, it may not be authentic. For the most accurate verification, collectors often send coins to professional grading services. These experts carefully inspect the coin, confirm its authenticity, and assign an official grade. Once certified, the coin is sealed in a protective holder, which helps preserve its condition and gives buyers confidence when purchasing. Beyond value and rarity, the 1969 Lincoln penny also carries a cultural connection to its era. The late 1960s were a time of transformation in the United States. The nation was experiencing social change, technological innovation, and historic events that shaped the future. Coins like the 1969 penny quietly traveled through that history. They passed through grocery stores, gas stations, movie theaters, and countless everyday transactions. Each coin may have a story: who held it, where it traveled, and how it eventually ended up in someone's collection. Another fun fact about Lincoln cents is that they are among the most widely collected coins in the United States. Many collectors begin their journey simply by saving pennies from circulation. Over time, those small coins turn into organized albums, each slot representing a specific year and mint mark. For many people, the 1969 penny is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, the complete Lincoln cent collection that spans more than a century. What makes this hobby special is that it blends history, art, and discovery. Every coin represents a moment in time when metal was struck into a design and released into the world. Collectors love the 1969 penny not because it's the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents the excitement of possibility. Even a common coin can become extraordinary under the right circumstances. Some collectors focus on building full date and mint sets. Others search specifically for high-grade coins or unusual errors. And many simply enjoy the thrill of looking through rolls of pennies to see what might appear. The idea that a 1-cent coin could be worth hundreds of dollars may sound surprising, but it reminds us of something important about collecting. Value is often determined by rarity, condition, and demand. A coin that once bought a piece of candy decades ago might now be a prized collectible sitting in a display case. So the next time you see a penny dated 1969 with a small d beneath the year, don't ignore it too quickly. Take a closer look. Examine the details. Notice the design, the shine, and the tiny pieces of history pressed into the metal. Because sometimes the smallest coins carry the biggest stories. And in the world of coin collecting, that simple penny might just be the beginning of a much larger discovery. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that the small copper coin in your hand could be worth far more than 1 cent. It might look ordinary, something you've seen thousands of times before, but hidden among billions of everyday coins are a few that collectors search for tirelessly. Today, we're going to explore one of those coins, the 1979 mint mark Lincoln penny, a piece of American currency that quietly carries history, curiosity, and sometimes surprising value. The 1979 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most recognizable coins in the United States. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, this penny was the first American circulating coin to feature a real historical figure. Before that moment, U.S. coins typically displayed symbolic images like Lady Liberty. The Lincoln penny changed that tradition forever, and for more than a century, it has remained a staple of everyday American money. By the time 1979 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for 70 years. The design used on the coin during that period was the familiar Lincoln Memorial reverse, which had been introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. On the front of the coin, you see the calm and thoughtful profile of Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above his head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the phrase, "In God we trust." Beneath the date appears a small but important detail for collectors: the mint mark on the 1979 penny we're discussing today. That small letter is a D, which stands for the Denver Mint. The United States Mint operates several facilities that produce coins, but Denver has been one of the most productive for decades. In 1979 alone, the Denver Mint produced billions of Lincoln pennies. At first glance, that huge number might make the coin seem completely common. And for most examples, it is. But as collectors know, the story doesn't end with mintage numbers. The 1979 Lincoln penny was made primarily from a bronze alloy that had been used for decades. The coin is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. It weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters in diameter. That warm copper color is one of the things people love about older pennies, especially compared to modern cents that are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. On the reverse side of the coin, The Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center. If you look very closely, especially with magnification, you can actually see a tiny image of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the memorial between the columns. It's one of the smallest detailed designs ever placed on a circulating coin, and many people never notice it until someone points it out. Even though billions of 1979 D pennies were produced, collectors still examine them carefully because small variations and minting errors can turn an ordinary coin into something much more interesting. Minting errors happen during the production process when something slightly unusual occurs while the coin is being struck. One type of error collectors search for is a doubled die. This happens when the design is accidentally impressed onto the coin's die more than once at slightly different angles. When coins are struck using that die, certain letters or numbers may appear doubled. On some Lincoln pennies, collectors have discovered doubling in the date or in the words "Liberty" or "In God We Trust." While not every 1979 D penny shows this feature, examples with strong doubling can attract serious attention from collectors. Another possible error is an off-center strike. In this case, the blank coin wasn't perfectly aligned when it was struck by the dies. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing and the image appears shifted to one side. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, these coins can become very collectible. There are also coins with clipped planchets, where the metal blank used to make the coin was cut improperly before the strike. This creates a curved or straight missing section along the edge. These kinds of errors are unusual, and when they appear on a coin like the 1979 D penny, they instantly stand out. Condition also plays a huge role in determining value. Most 1979 D pennies have spent decades moving from one hand to another. They've been dropped in jars, passed through vending machines, and carried in pockets and wallets. Over time, that constant use leaves marks, scratches, and wear. Because of that, coins that remain in near-perfect condition are far less common. Collectors use a grading scale to describe a coin's condition. A penny that looks almost brand new, with sharp details and bright original color, might be graded mint state. These coins often come from rolls that were saved shortly after they were produced. While circulated examples might only be worth face value, high-grade specimens can sell for significantly more. In fact, some exceptional 1979 D Lincoln pennies in pristine mint state condition have sold for impressive prices at auction. Coins graded MS-67 or higher, which means they are nearly flawless under magnification, have reached values ranging from dozens to even hundreds of dollars depending on the exact grade and color classification. For a coin that originally represented just 1 cent, that kind of jump in value can be surprising. Collectors also pay close attention to color. Copper coins are often described as red, red-brown, or brown. A red penny still shows most of its original bright copper luster, which is highly desirable. Over time, exposure to air and handling causes copper to darken, turning it brown. While brown coins can still be collectible, bright red examples in top condition are usually the most valuable. If you're curious about whether a 1979 D penny might be valuable, there are a few simple things you can check. Start by looking for the mint mark beneath the date on the front of the coin. A small D indicates it was produced in Denver. Next, examine the coin carefully under good lighting. Look for unusual doubling in the letters or numbers, or any obvious striking errors. Weight can also be a useful clue. A genuine 1979 penny should weigh close to 3.11 grams. If a coin is significantly lighter or heavier, it could indicate damage, alteration, or something unusual about the metal. Many collectors use small digital scales to check their coins when searching for errors. Magnification is another helpful tool. Even a simple coin loop or magnifying glass can reveal details that are impossible to see with the naked eye. Small die cracks, doubling, or unusual surface textures might suddenly become visible when you look more closely. Another interesting aspect of the 1979 D Lincoln penny is how it fits into the larger story of American coinage during the late 20th century. In the 1970s, the United States experienced rising copper prices. This eventually led the mint to change the composition of the penny in 1982 from mostly copper to mostly zinc. That means coins like the 1979 penny belong to the final years of the classic bronze cent era. For many collectors, that historical context adds emotional value. Holding one of these coins is like holding a small piece of a time when pennies were made from real copper and carried a certain weight and warmth that modern cents no longer have. There are also fun details that many people overlook. For example, if you look carefully at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, you may notice how incredibly fine the engraving is for such a small coin. Designers had to fit an entire famous monument onto a piece of metal smaller than a button, and yet the structure remains recognizable even today. Another surprising fact is just how many Lincoln pennies have been produced over the decades. Trillions of them have circulated since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. Yet despite those enormous numbers, collectors still find excitement in examining each coin for something unique. That excitement is part of what keeps coin collecting alive generation after generation. A child might begin by saving pennies in a jar, while a seasoned collector might study tiny design variations under powerful microscopes. But both share the same curiosity, the idea that something small and overlooked might hold hidden value. The 1979 Lincoln penny perfectly represents that spirit. Most examples are still worth just 1 cent, quietly moving through everyday commerce. But occasionally, someone discovers a perfectly preserved specimen or an unusual minting error that transforms an ordinary coin into a collectible treasure. Collectors today continue searching rolls of pennies, checking old piggy banks, and examining jars of spare change for coins like these. The thrill isn't just about money. It's about discovery, history, and the possibility that the next coin you examine could reveal something unexpected. So the next time you come across a handful of pennies, take a moment before tossing them aside. Look closely at the dates, the mint marks, and the details of the design. Among those small copper coins might be a 1979 Lincoln penny with a story to tell. And who knows? That quiet little coin sitting unnoticed in your change today might just be the one collectors have been hoping to find for years. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that the small copper coin in your hand might be far more interesting than it looks. Most people see pennies as the least valuable coins in circulation. They are often ignored, dropped into jars, or left behind as spare change. But sometimes, an ordinary-looking penny hides a story that collectors find fascinating. One example is the 1988 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of Americans have handled without ever realizing its background. The 1988 Lincoln penny without a mint mark is a coin that was produced in the United States during a time when pennies were already a familiar part of everyday life. By the late 1980s, the Lincoln cent had been circulating for nearly 8 decades. It first appeared in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. Since then, the coin has become one of the most recognizable pieces of American currency. When people talk about the 1988 penny with no mint mark, they are referring to coins that were produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For most of its history, the Philadelphia Mint did not place a mint mark on pennies. That means millions of coins were released into circulation without any letter below the date. While other mints like Denver used a D mint mark and San Francisco used an S, Philadelphia simply produced coins with a blank space under the year.in 1988. The United States Mint produced a massive number of pennies to meet the demand for everyday transactions. These coins were struck using a copper-plated zinc composition that had become standard earlier in the decade. Prior to 1982, pennies were mostly copper, but rising metal costs forced the mint to change the composition. From 1982 onward, pennies were made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. Because of this change, the 1988 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. The coin still has the classic copper color that people associate with older pennies, but underneath that thin outer layer is a core made mostly of zinc. The design of the coin remained the same design that Americans had known for decades. On the front or obverse side is the portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. This famous design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Above Lincoln's head is the word liberty, while the motto "In God We Trust" appears along the top edge of the coin. The date, 1988, sits to the right of Lincoln's portrait. On the reverse side of the coin, you will find the Lincoln Memorial. This design was introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The image of the memorial is detailed enough that if you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Abraham Lincoln seated inside the building. The words United States of America curve across the top, while the phrase E pluribus unum appears above the memorial. At the bottom is the denomination 1 cent. At first glance, nothing about the 1988 no-mint mark penny seems unusual. Millions were produced and used in everyday transactions across the country. However, coin collectors often look much deeper than the average person. They examine details, variations, and minting errors that can transform an ordinary coin into something far more interesting. One of the reasons collectors pay attention to the 1988 penny is because of certain known varieties connected to the minting process. Sometimes the dies used to strike coins are replaced or modified during production. When that happens, subtle differences can appear in the finished coins. These differences might be small, but to a collector, they are important clues that tell the story of how a coin was made. For example, specialists have discovered that certain 1988 pennies show design details that resemble those used on later coins. This type of variety can happen when a die intended for a different year is accidentally used in the minting process. When collectors notice these details, it creates excitement because it means the coin represents a unique moment inside the mint. Another reason collectors search for 1988 pennies is the possibility of mint errors. Mint errors occur when something unusual happens during the production of a coin. A coin might be struck slightly off-center, it might show doubling in the letters or numbers, or it might have other small differences caused by the machinery. Most 1988 pennies in circulation are perfectly normal and worth only their face value. However, coins with noticeable errors or those preserved in exceptional condition can attract the attention of collectors. Condition plays a huge role in determining value. Coins that were never circulated and still show their original shine are far more desirable than coins that have spent years passing from hand to hand in the coin collecting world. These pristine examples are often called mint state coins. When a 1988 no-mint mark penny survives in high mint state condition, collectors may be willing to pay significantly more than 1 cent for it. Over the years, certified examples of high-grade 1988 Philadelphia pennies have appeared at coin auctions and collector markets. While most examples sell for modest amounts, the best-preserved coins can reach surprising prices. In some cases, carefully graded pieces with strong detail and bright original surfaces have sold for dozens or even hundreds of dollars. These prices may seem surprising for a coin that was once used to buy candy or pay a small part of a store purchase. But collectors value coins not only for their age, but also for their quality and rarity in top condition. If you are curious about whether you might have a 1988 penny worth examining more closely, there are a few simple things to check. First, look directly under the date on the front of the coin. If there is no letter present, that means the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Next, take a close look at the condition of the coin. Coins with sharp details, minimal scratches, and bright surfaces are more appealing to collectors. Even small differences in condition can dramatically affect value. You can also examine the lettering and numbers carefully. Some collectors use magnifying glasses or coin loops to search for doubling or other unusual details. While most people will not find a rare variety, the process of searching can be fun and educational. Another important point is authenticity. Genuine 1988 pennies should weigh approximately 2.5 grams and show the copper-plated zinc appearance typical of the era. Coins that look unusual or have strange colors might simply be damaged or altered after leaving the mint. One fascinating aspect of coin collecting is that valuable coins are sometimes discovered in everyday places. People have found collectible coins in old jars, inherited collections, and even in pocket change. Because pennies circulate so widely, it is always possible that an interesting example is still out there waiting to be noticed. There are also a few surprising facts about the Lincoln penny that many people do not realize. The Lincoln cent was the first regular United States coin to feature a real historical person. Before 1909, American coins usually displayed symbolic figures such as Lady Liberty instead of actual individuals. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial reverse design remained in use for nearly 50 years. From 1959 until 2008, the image of the memorial appeared on billions of pennies. That makes it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. Even though pennies have very small face value, they carry enormous historical importance. Each year of production reflects a moment in time, including changes in technology, metal composition, and the equipment used by the United States Mint. Collectors today enjoy searching through rolls of pennies because they know that even common years like 1988 can hold small surprises. Whether it is a high-grade coin, a minor variety, or an unusual mint error, the thrill of discovery keeps the hobby exciting. The 1988 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny may not seem extraordinary at first glance, but it represents a piece of American history that traveled through millions of hands. It reminds us that everyday objects can carry stories about craftsmanship, economics, and the evolution of the nation's currency, so the next time you come across a penny dated 1988, take a closer look before dropping it into a jar. Notice the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, and the absence of a mint mark beneath the date. That small coin might be a simple piece of pocket change, or it might be the beginning of a deeper interest in the fascinating world of coin collecting. And who knows, the next time you check your spare change, you might discover that one of the smallest coins in your pocket holds a story far bigger than its value of just 1 cent. Most people would never look twice at a penny from the 1990s. It's the kind of coin that often ends up forgotten in a jar, lost under a couch cushion, or handed over without a second thought at a store counter. But what if one of those ordinary pennies quietly carried a story that collectors across the country are searching for? What if a single 1995 penny with a tiny letter on it could be worth far more than 1 cent? Today we're exploring the 1995 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a small copper-colored coin that might look completely ordinary, but has become surprisingly interesting to collectors and coin enthusiasts. Whether you've been saving coins for years or you're just curious about the change in your pocket, this penny holds a fascinating story about American history, minting technology, and the unexpected value hiding in everyday currency. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and meaningful history in the United States. It was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. This made it the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. The design on the front, known as the obverse, shows the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln. That portrait was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and more than a century later, it remains one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. By the time 1995 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for more than 85 years. The design used during that time was known as the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. On the back of the coin, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center, symbolizing the legacy of the 16th president. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny figure of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial between the columns. It's a detail so small that many people never notice it. The 1995 penny was produced at several United States mint facilities, but the one we're focusing on today carries a small letter D beneath the year. That letter stands for Denver, Colorado, where one of the major U.S. mint branches operates. The Denver Mint has produced billions of coins over the decades, helping supply currency for the entire country. In 1995, the Denver Mint struck more than 1 billion Lincoln pennies. At first glance, that number makes the coin sound extremely common. And in many ways, it is. Millions of these coins still exist today, quietly circulating in pocket change or resting in old coin jars. But collectors know that sometimes the true value of a coin doesn't come from how many were made. Instead, it comes from the small differences, unusual conditions, and rare mistakes that happen during production. The 1995 D Lincoln penny is made primarily from zinc with a thin copper coating. Since 1982, most pennies have been produced this way to reduce manufacturing costs. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures roughly 19 millimeters across. Its copper-colored surface gives it the classic appearance that people associate with American pennies. On the front of the coin, Abraham Lincoln faces to the right. Above his head is the word liberty, while the national motto "In God We Trust" appears along the top edge. The year 1995 is stamped to the right of Lincoln's portrait, and just below that date is the small D mint mark indicating Denver. Flip the coin over and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial design. At the top are the words United States of America, while the phrase E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one, sits above the memorial building. At the bottom, the denomination 1 cent clearly states the coin's value. At first glance, nothing about this design seems unusual, but collectors often study coins under magnification, searching for details that others might miss. That's where things start to get interesting with certain 1995 pennies. One of the most famous varieties from this year is actually the 1995 double die obverse penny. This error occurs when the die used to stamp the coin receives a slightly misaligned impression during its creation. As a result, certain parts of the design appear doubled. On these coins, the doubling is most noticeable in the letters of liberty, and sometimes in God We Trust. While the most well-known double die variety comes from the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark, collectors still examine Denver coins from 1995 very carefully. Minor doubled features, die cracks, and other small minting variations can make certain coins more desirable to specialists. Condition also plays a huge role in determining value. A coin that has spent years circulating through pockets and cash registers will usually show scratches, dull color, and worn details. But if a 1995 D penny somehow escaped circulation and remained in near-perfect condition, collectors take notice. Coins graded in mint state condition can sell for significantly higher prices than ordinary examples. Professional grading services evaluate coins based on their preservation, shine, and overall quality. A high-grade coin may still display its original mint luster, the bright reflective glow left behind by the minting process. For most circulated 1995 D pennies, the value remains close to face value. In other words, 1 cent. But when collectors find examples in exceptional condition, the price can climb. Some pristine coins graded MS-65 or higher have sold for several dollars, and occasionally much more if the coin has remarkable eye appeal. While that might not sound like life-changing money, remember that collectors often search through thousands of coins hoping to find just one perfect example. The thrill of discovery is a big part of what keeps the hobby alive. And sometimes, a penny surprises everyone. Over the years, high-grade Lincoln pennies from the 1990s have appeared in auctions and online marketplaces where collectors compete for the best-known examples. A coin that once sat unnoticed in a bankroll can suddenly attract serious attention simply because of its outstanding condition. If you're curious whether you might have a collectible 1995 D penny, there are a few things worth checking. First, examine the coin under bright light. Look closely at the surface for sharp details and strong luster. A coin that still looks shiny and crisp may be worth setting aside. Next, check for unusual features in the lettering. Using a magnifying glass or a simple coin loop can reveal subtle doubling or die imperfections. While not every unusual mark adds value, collectors often enjoy identifying different die varieties. It's also important to watch for signs of damage. Scratches, corrosion, or cleaning marks can reduce a coin's value dramatically. In the coin collecting world, originality is everything. A coin that remains untouched and natural usually holds more appeal than one that has been polished or altered. Another interesting aspect of the 1995 D Lincoln penny is how it represents a transitional era in American coin collecting. During the 1990s, interest in modern coins began growing rapidly. Collectors started paying closer attention to recent mint issues, realizing that today's pocket change could become tomorrow's collectible. Roll searching became a popular hobby, where enthusiasts purchase rolls of coins from banks and carefully examine each one. Many collectors still search through pennies from the 1990s, hoping to find pristine examples that have survived decades of circulation. There are also fun details hidden in the design that many people overlook. For instance, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse actually contains a tiny depiction of Lincoln himself seated inside the building. This makes the Lincoln penny one of the few coins in the world to feature the same person on both sides. Another surprising fact is how durable these coins are despite their thin copper coating. Even after years of use, many still retain traces of their original color and shine. Collectors also appreciate the 1995 D penny because it connects everyday life with history. Each coin represents a moment in time, minted during a specific year in American culture. In 1995, the country was experiencing rapid technological growth. The internet was beginning to spread into homes, and yet billions of simple pennies were still being produced the traditional way. Today, as digital payments become more common, physical coins like the Lincoln penny feel even more nostalgic. For many collectors, holding a coin from the past creates a tangible link to the era when it was made. The 1995 D Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin in American history, but it proves an important point about coin collecting. Value doesn't always come from age alone. Sometimes it comes from condition, subtle varieties, and the excitement of searching for hidden treasures in everyday places. So the next time you receive change from a store, take a moment to look at the pennies in your hand. That tiny letter D beneath the date might be easy to overlook, but it represents a coin struck at the Denver Mint more than 30 years ago. And while most of these coins will remain worth only a single cent, the possibility of finding a beautiful high-grade example or an interesting variety is what keeps collectors searching. Because every once in a while, an ordinary penny turns out to be far more interesting than anyone expected. And somewhere out there, another 1995 D Lincoln penny might still be waiting quietly in a jar, a drawer, or a pocket, just waiting for someone curious enough to finally notice it. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that the tiny coin in your hand might actually be worth far more than 1 cent. Most people overlook pennies every day, tossing them into jars or leaving them in drawers. But sometimes, one small detail can turn an ordinary coin into a fascinating piece of history. Today we're exploring the story of the 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin millions of Americans have seen, but very few have ever truly examined at first glance. The 1998 Lincoln penny looks like any other modern cent. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Yet the absence of a mint mark raises an interesting question for many people who discover this coin in their change. Where was it made, and could it actually be valuable? To understand this coin, we need to step back for a moment and look at how United States pennies are produced. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. The design quickly became one of the most recognizable coins in American history. By 1998, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for nearly 90 years. During that time, the design had changed slightly, but the basic appearance remained familiar. On the front of the coin, you see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Above Lincoln's head appears the word liberty, while the phrase "In God We Trust" stretches across the top. The year 1998 appears to the right of Lincoln's portrait. The reverse side of the coin in 1998 still featured the Lincoln Memorial design, which had been used since 1959. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue sitting inside the memorial building. It's one of the most detailed miniature designs ever placed on a circulating coin. Now let's talk about the mint mark, because this is where many collectors become curious. A mint mark tells you which United States mint facility produced the coin. In 1998, Lincoln pennies were struck at 3 main locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Denver carry a small D mint mark below the date. Coins from San Francisco usually carry an S, but most of those are proof coins made for collectors. Philadelphia coins, however, traditionally did not carry a mint mark for many years. That means when you see a 1998 penny with no mint mark, it was almost certainly produced at the Philadelphia Mint. So the absence of a mint mark does not necessarily mean the coin is rare. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint produced billions of pennies in 1998. But that doesn't mean every 1998 penny is only worth 1 cent. Some versions have characteristics that collectors actively search for. One of the most talked about varieties from this year is known among collectors as the 1998 wide AM penny. This variety appears on the reverse side of the coin, where the letters A and M in the word America are spaced slightly farther apart than usual to most people. This difference is almost invisible, but to coin collectors, it's an exciting discovery. The reason for this unusual spacing comes from the way coin dies were prepared. Occasionally, a die intended for proof coins was accidentally used to strike regular circulation coins. When that happens, subtle design differences appear. In the case of the 1998 wide AM penny, the proof reverse design found its way onto a small number of regular pennies. These coins entered circulation unnoticed, mixing with millions of ordinary cents. For years, people spent them without realizing anything special about them. But once collectors discovered the variety, interest quickly grew. Suddenly, people began checking their change more carefully. Another reason collectors enjoy searching for the 1998 penny is the possibility of minting errors. Coin production happens at extremely high speeds, and occasionally small mistakes occur during the process. These errors might include doubled letters, off-center strikes, or unusual die cracks, a double die error. For example, happens when the design is accidentally stamped twice onto the coin die at slightly different angles. This can cause certain letters or numbers to appear doubled when you look closely. While not every 1998 penny has these errors, the possibility keeps collectors interested. Turns an everyday coin into a small treasure hunt. Now let's talk about value, because this is the part many people find surprising. A normal circulated 1998 penny without special varieties is usually worth only a few cents to collectors. However, coins in extremely high condition can be worth significantly more. Coins are graded based on their condition, with the highest grades given to coins that look almost perfect, as if they just left the mint. A 1998 penny in top mint state condition, especially one graded by a professional coin grading service, can sell for several dollars or more. But the real excitement comes from the rare varieties. A confirmed 1998 wide AM penny in excellent condition has sold for hundreds of dollars at auction. Some particularly well-preserved examples have even reached higher prices when collectors compete for them. These sales remind us that value in coin collecting often comes from small details that most people overlook. If you want to check whether your 1998 penny might be special, the first step is simple observation. Start by looking at the front of the coin to confirm the date. Then check under the date for a mint mark. If there is no mint mark, it was struck in Philadelphia. Next, turn the coin over and examine the word America. Look closely at the spacing between the letters A and M. On a normal coin, the letters are very close together, almost touching. On the wide AM variety, there is a noticeable gap between them. A small magnifying glass can help make this detail easier to see. Another important factor is the coin's condition. Coins that have been heavily worn in circulation will show scratches, fading, and smooth areas where the design has rubbed away. Coins with sharp details and bright surfaces are usually more valuable. Of course, if you believe you have found a rare variety or error coin, it's always wise to have it examined by a professional coin dealer or grading service. Experts can confirm whether the coin is genuine and provide an accurate grade. There are also a few fun facts about the 1998 Lincoln penny that many people don't realize. For example, even though pennies appear copper-colored, modern pennies are actually made mostly of zinc. Since 1982, the composition has been about 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This change was made because copper had become too expensive to use for the entire coin. As a result, the metal value of modern pennies is much lower than many older cents. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial reverse design used in 1998 would soon come to an end. In 2009, the United States Mint introduced a series of special reverse designs to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Not long after that, the Lincoln Memorial was replaced with a new shield design. That means the 1998 penny belongs to the long-running memorial era of Lincoln cents, which lasted exactly 50 years from 1959 to 2008. Collectors today appreciate coins from this era not only for their history but also for the hidden varieties that occasionally appear. Many hobbyists enjoy searching through rolls of pennies from banks, hoping to discover overlooked treasures. The thrill of coin collecting often comes from the possibility that something valuable might be hiding in plain sight. Unlike many hobbies, you don't always need expensive equipment or rare items to get started. Sometimes all it takes is curiosity and a careful eye. That's one reason the 1998 Lincoln penny continues to attract attention. It reminds collectors that even coins produced in huge numbers can contain surprises. Millions of people have handled this coin without giving it a second thought. Yet somewhere out there, a small number of special varieties are still waiting to be discovered. So the next time you receive a handful of change, take a moment before dropping those pennies into a jar. Look closely at the dates, the mint marks, and the tiny design details. Because hidden among those ordinary coins might be a small piece of history, a fascinating minting variety, or even a coin worth far more than its face value. And who knows, the next 1998 penny you find might not just be spare change. It might be the beginning of a collector's discovery that most people would never even notice. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that the small copper coin in your hand might be more interesting than it first appears. Most people barely glance at their pennies before tossing them into a jar or spending them without a second thought. But sometimes, An ordinary-looking coin carries a story that collectors find fascinating. Today we're exploring the 2002 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of people have seen, but very few have truly looked at closely. The 2002 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It was the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure like Liberty. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and his portrait of Lincoln has remained on the front of the coin for more than a century. By the time the year 2002 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already become a familiar part of everyday American life. Billions of these coins had been minted over decades. Yet each year of production still holds its own small story. The 2002 penny was produced during a time when the U.S. Mint was focusing on efficiency and large-scale production. The coin continued the classic Lincoln Memorial reverse design that had been used since 1959. When people talk about a 2002 penny with no mint mark, they're referring to coins that were produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Unlike coins from the Denver Mint, which carry a small D, or the San Francisco Mint, which uses an S, many pennies struck in Philadelphia traditionally have no mint mark at all. That means the blank space beneath the year on the front of the coin is completely normal for this version. At first glance, the 2002 no mint mark Lincoln penny looks exactly like any other modern penny. On the front, you see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty. In front of him is the year 2002. Below the date is the empty area where a mint mark would appear if the coin had been made somewhere other than Philadelphia. Along the upper edge are the words, "In God We Trust." Turn the coin over and you see the Lincoln Memorial. This design was created by Frank Gasparo and introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the tiny building on the reverse, you can actually see the statue of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. It's an incredibly detailed design for such a small coin. The metal composition of the 2002 penny is another interesting detail. Earlier Lincoln cents were made mostly of copper, but that changed in 1982 when the U.S. Mint switched to a new composition. Modern pennies like the 2002 version are made of a zinc core with a thin copper plating. This keeps the coin looking like copper while making it less expensive to produce. Because billions of pennies are made every year, most people assume they have little value. And in many cases that's true. A typical 2002 penny in circulated condition is usually worth only 1 cent. But collectors know that within large mintages, unusual varieties and errors can appear. And that's where the story becomes much more interesting. One of the most talked about features of modern Lincoln cents is the possibility of minting errors. These errors happen during the production process when something unusual occurs while the coin is being struck. Sometimes the design is slightly doubled. Sometimes the metal shifts during striking. Other times the coin is off-center or missing part of the design. Collectors often search through rolls of pennies looking for these rare mistakes. Even though the 2002 no mint mark penny is extremely common overall, certain error versions can be worth far more than face value. For example, some collectors have discovered 2002 pennies with noticeable die cracks, where a thin raised line appears across the coin because of a cracked minting die. Others have found coins with off-center strikes, where the design is shifted toward one side. There are also examples of doubled die coins from different years that have sold for impressive prices, which encourages collectors to carefully examine pennies from every date, including 2002. Even small doubling in the lettering or date can turn an ordinary coin into a collectible piece. When it comes to real market values, most regular 2002 pennies with no mint mark sell for just a few cents in circulated condition. However, coins in perfect or near-perfect condition can attract much higher prices among collectors. A 2002 penny graded in mint state condition by professional grading companies can sometimes sell for several dollars, or even more if it is exceptionally well preserved. In rare cases, special error versions have sold for significantly higher amounts. Off-center strike pennies or coins with dramatic minting mistakes can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars depending on the severity of the error and the coin's condition. That's why coin roll hunters often examine thousands of pennies hoping to find a hidden gem. If you're curious about identifying a genuine 2002 no mint mark Lincoln penny, the process is fairly simple. First, look at the date on the front of the coin. It should clearly read 2002. Next, check the area just below the date. If there is no letter there, the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. That blank space is what collectors mean when they say, "No mint mark." Then examine the coin carefully under good lighting. Look for unusual features such as doubling in the letters, cracks across the surface, or parts of the design that appear misaligned. A magnifying glass or a small coin loop can help reveal details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Condition is also extremely important in coin collecting. Coins that have never been used in circulation often have sharp details and a bright surface. These are known as mint state coins, and they are much more desirable to collectors than worn examples. Even a common coin like the 2002 penny can become more valuable if it has been preserved in nearly perfect condition. Another interesting fact about modern pennies is that many people overlook them completely. Because their face value is so small, they often end up forgotten in drawers, jars, and old piggy banks. But this is exactly why collectors enjoy searching through them. Hidden among billions of ordinary coins, there is always the chance that one unusual piece slipped through the minting process. The Lincoln penny also holds a special place in American culture. For generations, people have used pennies for good luck traditions, from tossing them into fountains to keeping one in a pocket for prosperity. Children learn basic math using pennies, and families often save them in jars over many years. Even though the design has changed over time, the portrait of Abraham Lincoln has remained a constant reminder of American history. Every Lincoln penny connects the present to the legacy of one of the nation's most respected presidents. For coin collectors, the appeal of the 2002 no mint mark penny is not just about its potential value. It's about the thrill of discovery. Finding an unusual variety or a perfectly preserved coin in everyday change feels like uncovering a small piece of hidden treasure. Many collectors began their hobby simply by examining the coins they already had. Over time, they learned to recognize small differences in design, mint marks, and condition. A single penny could spark a lifelong interest in history, art, and the minting process. Today, coin roll hunting has become popular online, with collectors sharing their discoveries and teaching others how to search for valuable coins. The idea that something as ordinary as a penny could hold unexpected value keeps the excitement alive, so the next time you come across a 2002 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, take a moment to look at it more closely. Notice the portrait of Lincoln, the tiny details of the memorial on the back, and the craftsmanship involved in creating such a small piece of currency that it may only be worth a single cent, or it might be a perfectly preserved example that collectors would love to add to their collections. And in rare cases, it could even be an unusual heir coin hiding in plain sight. That's the beauty of coin collecting. Every coin has a story, and sometimes the most ordinary ones are the most surprising. And who knows, the next penny you pick up might not just be spare change. It might be the start of your own discovery. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that the tiny coin in your hand might actually be worth far more than 1 cent. It may look ordinary, something people usually ignore or drop into a jar at home. But sometimes, a single penny can carry a story, a history, and even a surprising value that most people never notice. Today we're talking about a coin that millions of Americans have seen but very few have truly looked at closely. The 2006 D Mint Mark Lincoln Penny. At first glance, the 2006 D Lincoln Penny seems completely ordinary. It's a small copper-colored coin featuring one of the most recognizable faces in American history, President Abraham Lincoln. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll see the small letter D under the year on the front of the coin. The United States Mint produced billions of pennies in 2006. So many people assume these coins are all the same and worth only 1 cent. But as collectors know, the story of a coin is often far more interesting than it appears on the surface. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and fascinating history. It was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Before that time, it was unusual for real historical figures to appear on American coins. The design, created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, showed a simple and dignified portrait of Lincoln on the front, a design that has remained one of the most iconic images in U.S. coinage. Over the decades, the Lincoln penny has gone through several design changes on the reverse side, But Lincoln's portrait has remained by the time 2006 arrived. The Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for nearly a century. The reverse design during this period featured the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. On the back of the 2006 penny, you can see the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., with tiny columns representing the famous monument. If you look closely enough, you can even see a small representation of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, making this one of the most detailed designs ever placed on such a small coin. The 2006 penny was produced at the Denver Mint in Colorado. In that year alone, the Denver Mint struck more than 4 billion pennies. That number may sound enormous, and it is. But even when billions of coins are produced, certain examples can still become collectible because of their condition, unusual characteristics, or minting errors. One interesting thing about the 2006 Lincoln penny is the metal composition. Many people think pennies are made entirely of copper, but that hasn't been true for decades. Since 1982, most U.S. pennies have actually been made from a zinc core with a thin copper coating on the outside. The 2006 penny follows that same formula, consisting of about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This change helped reduce the cost of producing pennies, since copper had become more expensive over time. Even though the coin is mostly zinc, the copper plating gives it the classic reddish color that people associate with pennies. When a 2006 penny is brand new and uncirculated, it can shine with a bright red luster. Collectors often refer to this as a red penny, and coins that maintain that original color can sometimes command higher prices. Another important detail is the mint mark. The small letter D under the date tells collectors that the coin was made in Denver. The United States Mint operates several facilities, but not all coins are produced at every location. Mint marks help identify where a coin was struck, and in some cases, coins from one mint can become more desirable than those from another. Now, here is where things start to get interesting for collectors. Even though billions of 2006 pennies were produced, certain varieties and errors have caught the attention of coin enthusiasts. Minting errors happen when something goes slightly wrong during the production process. Sometimes the metal blank is not perfectly aligned. Sometimes the design is struck twice. Occasionally, the coin may even show unusual marks or distortions that make it unique. For example, collectors have reported off-center strikes on some 2006 pennies. This happens when the blank coin is not perfectly positioned when it is struck by the dies. As a result, part of the design may appear shifted to one side, leaving a blank area on the coin. Depending on how dramatic the error is, these off-center coins can be worth far more than their face value. Another error that occasionally appears is the double die effect. This occurs when the design on the die itself is slightly duplicated during the manufacturing process. When coins are struck using that die, certain letters or numbers may appear doubled when viewed closely. On a penny, this might show up in the date, the word liberty, or the phrase "In God we trust." While not every 2006 penny has these features, the possibility of finding one is part of what makes coin collecting exciting. A careful collector might examine dozens or even hundreds of pennies searching for something unusual. Condition is another major factor that affects a coin's value. Most pennies in circulation quickly develop scratches, dull color, and wear from everyday use. But occasionally, a coin is preserved in nearly perfect condition. These coins are known as uncirculated or mint state coins. When graded by professional services, they can receive ratings like MS65, MS66, or even higher. For the 2006 penny, a typical circulated example is usually worth only 1 cent. But an uncirculated example with bright red color can sell for several dollars. And in extremely high grades, especially those graded MS67 or higher, collectors have paid much more. There have even been auction sales where top-quality examples sold for impressive prices. Some certified high-grade 2006 pennies have sold for over $100 at auction. That might sound surprising for such a modern coin, but it shows how condition and rarity within that condition level can dramatically increase value. So how can someone tell if they might have a valuable example? The first step is to look carefully at the coin's surface. A valuable coin usually has strong details, minimal scratches, and bright original color. The next step is to check the mint mark and date to confirm it is indeed a 2006 penny with the small d beneath the year. Magnification can also help reveal potential errors. A simple coin magnifier or jeweler's loupe allows collectors to examine the lettering, the date, and the edges of the design. If you notice unusual doubling, strange shapes, or parts of the design that seem misaligned, the coin might be worth further research. Another important tip is to compare your coin with verified images from trusted coin collecting resources. Counterfeit pennies are rare for modern coins, but altered coins can sometimes appear in the market. For example, someone might modify a coin to make it appear like a rare error. Careful comparison and, if necessary, professional grading can help confirm authenticity. Beyond value, the 2006 D Lincoln penny also carries several fun details that many people overlook. The Lincoln Memorial reverse is one of the few coin designs where the same person appears on both sides of the coin. Lincoln's portrait is on the front, and the statue of Lincoln inside the memorial appears on the back. It's a small detail, but it connects the design in a unique way. Another interesting fact is that pennies like the 2006 D coin continue the legacy of one of America's longest-running coin series. The Lincoln penny has now existed for well over a century, surviving design changes, metal changes, and even debates about whether the penny should continue to be produced at all. Collectors love coins like the 2006 D penny because they remind us that valuable discoveries can still be hiding in everyday change. Unlike extremely rare coins that cost thousands of dollars, modern pennies are accessible to almost everyone. Anyone can search through a jar of coins, a roll from the bank, or even their pocket change. For many collectors, the thrill isn't just about money. It's about the hunt, the history, and the possibility that something ordinary might turn out to be special. Every coin tells a story about the time it was made, the people who used it, and the journey it has taken through circulation. The 2006 D Lincoln penny may not seem extraordinary at first glance, but when you take a closer look, it becomes a small piece of American history. It represents modern minting technology, a century-old design tradition, and the ongoing fascination people have with coins. And perhaps the most exciting part is this. Millions of these pennies are still out there. Some are sitting in drawers, jars, piggy banks, and cash registers across the country. Most will remain ordinary coins worth just 1 cent. But somewhere among them could be an exceptional example, a rare error, or a perfectly preserved coin waiting to be discovered. So the next time you see a penny from 2006 with a small d under the date, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Because sometimes the smallest coin in your pocket can hold the biggest surprise. Imagine pulling a simple penny from your pocket, the kind most people would ignore or drop into a jar. Now imagine that this ordinary-looking coin quietly carries a story about American history, modern minting technology, and a collecting world where even a 1-cent coin can spark curiosity. Today we're taking a close look at the 2016 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin millions of people have handled without realizing there may be more to it than meets the at first glance. The 2016 Lincoln cent without a mint mark seems completely ordinary. It is part of the long-running Lincoln penny series that has been produced in the United States since 1909. If you find one in your change, it probably looks like any other modern penny. Copper-colored, small, and easy to overlook. But for collectors, even modern pennies are worth examining closely. Small details can turn an everyday coin into something much more interesting. The 2016 Lincoln penny without a mint mark was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. In the United States, coins produced in Philadelphia traditionally do not carry a mint mark, which is why the coin simply shows the date 2016 beneath the portrait of Abraham Lincoln with no letter beside it. While other mints like Denver use a D and San Francisco often uses an S, Philadelphia coins usually remain unmarked. Because of this tradition, many people mistake the missing mint mark as an error when in reality it simply tells us where the coin was made. To understand this coin fully, we need to step back into history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first regular circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. Before that time, American coins showed symbolic figures such as Lady Liberty. The design by sculptor Victor David Brenner placed Lincoln's profile on the front, creating an iconic image that has now lasted for more than a century. Over the decades, the reverse design of the penny has changed several times. From 1959 to 2008, the back featured the Lincoln Memorial. In 2009, the U.S. Mint released 4 special designs celebrating Lincoln's life. Then, in 2010, the penny adopted the Union Shield reverse design that continues today. The 2016 penny belongs to this modern era of Lincoln sense, with the shield on the reverse symbolizing unity and strength in the United States. If you flip a 2016 penny over, you'll see that shield design clearly. A large shield fills most of the coin's surface. Across the top runs a banner with the words E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. The shield's vertical stripes represent the states united under the federal government, while the horizontal bar at the top represents Congress. Above the shield reads United States of America, and below it is the denomination 1 cent. Even though this coin looks copper, its metal composition might surprise you. Modern Lincoln pennies are not solid copper like the early coins of the 1900s. Since 1982, pennies have been made mostly from zinc, with a thin copper plating on the outside. The 2016 penny contains about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This change happened because the price of copper rose dramatically, making the old solid copper pennies too expensive to produce. Because millions of 2016 pennies were struck, the coin itself is not rare in normal condition. The Philadelphia Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents that year, meaning many of them are still circulating today. However, collectors know that rarity in coins does not always come from the date alone. Sometimes it comes from condition, unusual varieties, or minting errors that slipped past quality control. One of the most exciting parts of modern coin collecting is searching for errors. Even in highly automated mint facilities, small mistakes occasionally happen during production. These mistakes can create coins that look different from the standard design, and collectors often value them far above their 1 cent face value. For the 2016 penny, collectors have reported several types of possible errors. These can include off-center strikes, where the coin design appears shifted to one side. Sometimes a coin may show a double die effect, where parts of the lettering or design appear slightly doubled because of a misalignment during the die creation process. Other errors might include clipped planchets, where a piece of the metal blank was missing before the coin was struck, or weak strikes that leave parts of the design looking faint. When a genuine mint error appears on a modern penny, its value can increase significantly. For example, a dramatic off-center 2016 penny might sell for anywhere from $20 to over $100 depending on how strong the error appears. A clearly visible double die variety could attract even more attention from collectors who specialize in error coins. Condition also plays an important role. Most pennies in circulation quickly become scratched, worn, and darkened from years of handling. But if a 2016 penny was saved early and kept in perfect condition, it might qualify as a high-grade coin. Professional grading companies use detailed scales to measure a coin's condition, and a nearly flawless example could receive a mint state grade. High-grade modern pennies sometimes surprise people at auction. While common circulated examples remain worth just 1 cent, a pristine coin graded at the very top of the scale can sell for dozens of dollars. Collectors who build registry sets often compete for the highest quality coins available, and that competition can drive prices higher than many people expect. Of course, when talking about coin values, it's important to stay realistic. The typical 2016 penny without a mint mark found in everyday change will almost always be worth exactly 1 cent. But the thrill of coin collecting comes from the search. Somewhere among the billions produced, a few unusual pieces may stand out, and those are the coins collectors love to discover. If you want to check whether your 2016 penny might be interesting, there are a few simple things to look for. First, examine the coin under bright light. A magnifying glass can help reveal small details in the lettering and design. Look closely at the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust." If you notice unusual doubling, strange spacing, or parts of the design that seem out of place, the coin might be worth a closer look. Next, check the coin's shape and alignment. A normal penny will have the design perfectly centered. If the image is clearly shifted or missing part of the rim, it could be an off-center strike. Also look for cracks in the metal or raised lines that might indicate a die crack during minting. Weight can also help confirm authenticity. A standard modern penny weighs about 2.5 grams. If a coin is significantly heavier or lighter, it may have been altered or damaged. Serious collectors often use small digital scales to check these details. Another important step is avoiding common misunderstandings. Some people believe that any penny without a mint mark is rare. In reality, Philadelphia coins often lack mint marks, especially on older and modern pennies. The missing letter is normal and does not automatically make the coin valuable. Despite being a modern coin, the 2016 penny still connects us to more than a century of American history. The same portrait of Abraham Lincoln that appeared in 1909 continues to appear today, making it the longest-running design in U.S. coin history. That continuity is one reason collectors find the Lincoln Cent series so fascinating. There are also fun details hidden in the design. If you look closely at Lincoln's portrait, you may notice how detailed the engraving is, especially around